welcome back to Otaku no Video. As always, thank you very much for joining me for today's review of Angel Beats, an anime series that came out this year in Japan and hopefully will get licensed soon over here in America. Now, Angel Beats was intended to be sort of the big anime of the year. It was really built up to be a huge event, primarily because it was conceived and written by Jun Maeda, who was and is a major creative force at the visual novel studio Key. So Jun Maeda basically either created or wrote Air, Canon, and Clannad. Major force there. And these are three of the biggest visual novels ever, basically. And so when he decided to tell this story, he quickly realized that it wasn't going to be really a good visual novel story. And so he went to PA Works and Aniplex and said, I wanted to make an anime out of this. And he brought some other folks from Key along with him. And they made Angel Beats. So this is a 13-episode anime series. And I call it Haibane Renmei meets Haruhi Suzumiya. And you'll see why as we move on. Unfortunately, when it was first released, there were some animation issues, especially in the first episode. And so the art quality varied significantly. There were some really beautifully animated sequences and some others that were choppy and well, not choppy, but the art was kind of off-model here and there. And unfortunately, that really dampened the fans' enthusiasm for the series. And I think a little unfairly. Certainly there were issues, but pretty much every anime has animation issues here and there. So, yeah, unfortunately, I think it was hyped a little bit too much. And unfortunately, for those fans, I mean, there are some really beautifully animated sequences in this, both action and concert sequences that are just lots of budget and nicely animated, things like that. Just a joy to watch. And so it's unfortunate that folks kind of avoided it as a result of that, but that's kind of the way things are. But certainly some beautiful animation to watch there. And the director also spent a lot of time on interesting camera angles and really trying to make this look distinctive. There's a lot of interesting camera angles and a lot of work with lighting. Characters will be in dark rooms, light rooms, afternoon light, morning light, evening light, things like that. And you actually get a feel for that lighting. The light will actually shine on characters in different ways, depending on where they are and where they're standing. Also, the backgrounds have a lot of work done with color and things like that, which is, again, very nice to see. A lot of attention to detail there. Now, the real core of this series lies in the characters. It is by visual novel creators, so this really focuses on the characters. The basic premise of the series is that a teenager wakes up with no memories in this high school surrounded by a bunch of characters, and this high school is sort of a purgatory. Everyone there has died, or everyone he's surrounded with have died. And in this high school environment, basically, if you accept the normal flow of high school life and get into the normal routine, eventually you fade away. You just disappear and you move on. And the characters don't want this to happen to them, so they're fighting back against the system. And there's a girl that's sort of fighting them, who's the student council president kind of person. And so they're fighting against her and all that kind of stuff. But the great thing about the series is that it balances story or plot and characters, where much of the series deals with these characters' previous lives and what they're doing with those lives here, and what those previous lives imply about who they are and the decisions they've made, things like that. But there's also a plot. So we kind of bounce back and forth between plot stuff and then delving into a character and what that character's life was like. And this is one of the more impressive things about the series, is that it's easy with this kind of a setup to make each episode about a particular character. And, okay, here is this character's backstory, and here's this character's backstory. And while there are a few episodes which are kind of like that, the series in general very deftly weaves back and forth between plot stuff and character stuff and action and comedy and other things like that. But you get both of them without ever feeling overwhelmed by one or the other. And so the character stuff feels like a real spice. It feels like, oh, we're finally now understanding more about this character, which is great. And the writing of these characters is definitely effective. The voice work, I want to mention, excellent. They got a really top-notch cast for this, and one of the things I listen for is screams. When somebody has something really emotional happen to them and they scream out a character's name, how does that sound like? And there are a few sequences in here where characters have to really be emotionally devastated, and it really comes across in their voices, which is a great sign. Now, this is a very emotional story. The writer clearly took what he learned from visual novels and applied it to a TV series like this, in terms of figuring out how to emotionally engage the viewer in the characters' stories. This can be a little difficult because you get really wrapped up in some of these characters, and it is very emotionally involving. Good for him. It's just it can be tough. And he also spent a lot of time on the world and thinking through the consequences of living in this purgatory, this kind of a fantasy world in terms of it's not really real. And what are the consequences of that? How can the characters take advantage of the unique natures of this world and accomplish what they're trying to accomplish? And then how does the world react to that in terms of keeping things in line? It's very interesting, and it's very, again, well thought out. Now, one surprise in this series is that I'm not a huge fan of the music. I actually listened to the OST separately, and I wasn't a huge fan, and that's important because the music is by Jun Maeda, the writer. He's also a composer, and he does the music for the visual novels. And there's some beautiful pieces in the Angel Beats OST, but in general, it's mediocre synthesizer stuff, in my opinion. It just doesn't really grab me, unfortunately, which is kind of a surprise. But, yeah, whatever. So overall, this series really worked for me emotionally. I got involved in the characters. The plot was effectively strung out over the series. And that's another interesting thing, is that this story really fits the length very well. There's almost no padding. There's essentially no padding. What you might think is padding is actually establishing character, things like that. And by the end, I was really emotionally sucked into this series. I mean, I cried at the end, literally tears streaming down my face, sobbing, crying. And this very rarely happens for me. So I was thoroughly impressed. That's quite an achievement. So if you want to talk more about Angel Beats or other anime and manga, please stop by my website, otakunovideo.net, where you can see our blog, the forum, chat room, all sorts of stuff like that. And there'll be a thread up on the forum for this series itself so you can talk about it. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for watching.